Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, another session of the Air Cargo Handling Logistics digital event. And this particular session is titled Shipper Vertical Focus E-commerce. And I've got two very established veterans of the industry and wise minds here who are going to be discussing this. And the first one is Olivier Bijaoui, who's president of OB Invest. Olivier, lovely to have you on board again and always nice to see you.
Thanks.
And the second one, who needs no introduction by this time, because he's also the chairman and he's been moderating many of the events, but it's Stan Wraight, who also is, again, Stan, dare I say, a wise man. So looking forward to some of this wisdom to be shared from the pair of you. So, yeah, gents.
Likewise, Chris, it's a pleasure to be sitting back and allowing you to moderate this one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, boys, now, e-commerce. I mean, it's used, it's bounded around, it's in so much press coverage, and yet people don't have a full understanding of not just what it is, but what it's going to mean for our business as it continues to just keep growing and growing and growing. So what I'd like to do, gents, is I'd like to just put a couple of slides up, and then we'll talk through those slides, and then we'll throw a few questions up for both of you. So if you don't mind, Salem, if you could just put the first two slides up, please, that'd be great. Okay, right. So now here's just a few statements, gentlemen. So how much did the pandemic affect retail sales estimates, and which e-commerce markets are growing the fastest? So the source of this is the eMarketer, and what we're saying here is that Asia Pacific and North America will lead the regional rankings for retail e-commerce sales this year. China's outsized role will mean that Asia Pacific will account for 60.8% of retail e-commerce sales worldwide, and that's in 2021. And then North America claims 20.3% share, and Western Europe 12.6%. Now, the pandemic fueled rapid acceleration of online buying in several countries that were somewhat lagging, and some of those will continue to see major expansion again in the latter quarter of 2021 and as we move into next year. India, Brazil, Russia, and Argentina are all projected to post at least 26% growth in retail e-commerce sales this year. Now, next slide, please. Now, Stan, if you wouldn't mind, on this particular one, okay, we're looking at retail e-commerce sales worldwide, and we've got 2019 to 2025 estimates here. Now, can you just talk us through this one?
Yeah, well, basically what I want everyone to understand is this is the value of the goods being sold. It's not what we can benefit from as air freight service providers. But one thing we have to remember is the driver behind e-commerce is consumer buying behavior. And consumer buying behavior in e-commerce is, I want same day delivery if possible, but I will accept the 1 or 2 days. But if someone's longer than that, I won't use them. And the buying behavior is just continuously expanding. I mean, people don't want to go to shops. It's not just COVID. Another thing that's important, and remember what the mantra is, what the people who are really into this, like the Alibabas and Amazons of this world, have stated clearly that it's anything, anywhere in 72 hours or less. That means somebody in Brazil buying something from China wants it there in no longer than 3 days, if he can afford it. So that's interesting. There's another statement here, which is online sales are 4 times more expensive than over the counter. Now, that might seem as a surprise to you, but just think of the logistics, the complexity, and everything else of the actual transaction. It's 4 times more expensive to handle it in e-commerce than having someone behind a sales counter. You walk in, you like a red sweater, you look at it, you try it, and there's no thing about ordering 5 sweaters to make sure you like it. You actually pick up and you done it after trying it on, etc. So for a large retail chain, it's very expensive to use e-commerce. So the only way it's viable is to take some of the cost out of the supply chain. And what that cost is it's very apparent. It's bricks and mortar retail sales stores. That's one thing. It's people. It's a second thing. The third thing that you're taking out of the equation is middlemen. So the distribution centers, all this have to go if you're going to support an e-retail activity in your company. The thing is, though, that the exporters and importers say they have no choice. This is the way people want to buy things from now on. So you've got to eat up those costs, but you've got to knock something out somewhere. And that's going to be if we're not able to provide a good service as air cargo supply chain participants, we better be prepared that people are going to be stressing us to lower prices. So the only way to make money in e-commerce in the future is to add value. That's what that statement says. Well over 100,000 e-retailers. It's not just Amazon and Alibaba is something else that's important for the audience to understand. Alibaba and Amazon are certainly huge. There's no doubt about it. But you have JD.com, SF Express. You have a lot of other players. You have Amazon, of course, with their own fleet. But what we got to understand is there's a lot of businesses that have developed because of e-commerce that didn't exist before. We did a study in San Jose, California, not too long ago, where Hainan Airlines were there. And the amount of people that were foreign students and local relatives that were shipping via e-commerce back to their village or whatever was astounding to us, that a whole A330 passenger flight could be full of that. So multiple shippers. And the other thing about it is factories are now putting online their product. Like the automotive industry, for example, you'll have a large automotive factory. Normally, if a local garage needs a spare part, they would go to the local dealer. They would get some kind of discount so they could make a markup on it. But now it's automotive dealers straight to that local garage, for example. So that's interesting. You'll see here on the red line, the percent of change is, in other words, the compound growth seems to be going down, but that's because e-commerce is 10% of 7.3 trillion in retail sales, not what we're experiencing in 2021, which is 4.9. So while the compound share is going down, you'll see the percentage of total retail sales with e-commerce is going up.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's amazing. And the numbers are just incredible, aren't they? But when you think, like you just said there, Stan, anybody, anywhere can just start up their business, and the facilities are there now. It's incredible. And I'm sorry to anybody listening now, but I'm going to make a little pitch here. My daughter-in-law, just before she gave birth to our third grandchild a couple of days ago, she started her own little business called Daisy Blue with children's clothing. And it's taken off incredibly, and fair play to her. While she was under enough personal pressure, she managed to kick that one off. So she's added to this number. So well done, Tara, really pleased. Now, Stan, moving forward, and also Olivier, one of the things Stan mentioned there earlier was about value. Now, obviously, value has got to start rising, but we're faced, as are other industries at the moment, with so many different pressures, like drivers, not enough drivers now. You're looking at certain quality and standards in the workplace. It's a bit of a conundrum there, Olivier, and obviously from yourself being a handler and an expert, this paradox of we need value to go up, yet everything else is pressuring us to come down in costs. How are you facing that, and what do you think is going to be the biggest challenges that you face moving forward?
Well, I think that first of all, actually the way e-commerce is actually moving. First of all, we have to split, the Amazon thing and the rest of the e-commerce players. Why? Because Amazon model is pretty much, done. I mean, it's quite clear that Amazon has put some of the challenge behind by getting their own fleet, doing their own handling, getting to a situation where they do some dispatch out of one stations and fly to the other stations around in Europe, for example, like they do right now. So I think Amazon is, and they have, of course, which is the main things. They have these massive warehouse where they store all the goods that are coming, that they bring from China, mostly from China, by the way, and then they distribute. And then they distribute within a period of time which is extremely short. So I think that Amazon model has has shown the way for the other e-commerce player in a way, but they are not yet there. So what we see right now is a massive amount of flights coming mostly to, for example, in Europe, to Liège or to Kennedy in the case of the US, where all the e-commerce from China and for some e-retailers and stands right. It's not only Alibaba but it's JD. I mean, there's some massive others, e-retailer, but there's also some small one that have substantial amount of business already. So what we're seeing is a massive flow of flights, whereby organized mostly, by the way, by Chinese logistic company, which are chartering these aircraft. And these guys are new to the scene. I mean, these guys who are chartering, you can see some names that we know because they've been there as a forwarder before, but I'm talking about Chinese company like Sinotrans. But you're seeing also people that we have never seen before. And most of them are unknown to the market. They're not big freight forwarder as we know. So these guys kind of, fly, all these e-commerce and then break it and dispatch it when it's in Liège. Now, what you're seeing is stands right. You're seeing a 3-4 days, kind of distributions from China when you order online, and there's many examples of big Chinese company selling online right now. I think one of the most famous is Shein, doing these wearings, and then they're very active. They're kind of a super Zara, if you want it. And so, we are there. What's happening on the ground is a bit different than what we're used to. It's not like, pallets arrive from the aircraft, then we break it down, then we deliver it to the forward. It's a very different scenario. Most of the pallets remain as BUP, and built up pallets and move to the second line, where they're going to break down in a bit of a different way than we're used to do, although it's kind of an airway build kind of, picture there. And then be picked up or distributed either by trucks going other places in Europe, either picked up by some company that will then take care of the last mile and dispatch this cargo. So the model is a bit different, Chris, and it's quite interesting. Now, because of the imbalance between import and export, as Stan was showing in his former in the other spot, is that you can see America being 20%, you can see some other being 16%, Europe being 12%.
Yeah.
So is the unbalance between the import and the export, but it's picking up. You're right when you mention about your family, selling these things, Chris. I mean, this is what will make everything pick up, and will fill up the aircraft the other way.
Yep.
And actually, there's still a mix on the other, going back to China, between some e-commerce, because it's already there for some stuff, and general cargo. But I think that as we move forward, these flights will be full in and out of e-commerce. So it's a bit of a different, to me, it's a bit of a different picture.
Yep. And sorry, Salem, you can take that slide down now, and we'll pull another slide up shortly. But just on that, gents, and Stan, marked out the difference there between B2B and B2C and what's expected, and you just endorsed that, Olivier. But as we're moving forward now, and like I said, we've got all these different pressures. It's interesting now, the way people are looking at it, and this pandemic, if anything, has sped things up so fast. It's made us all focus more on digitization, on data sharing, artificial intelligence, trend setting, all those areas that people weren't really doing much about. They were attempting it, but they weren't addressing it with the enthusiasm that they should. Now, all of a sudden, there's an urgency now for people to start doing things. Now, in some of the sessions here, we've had discussions on collaboration, and everybody wants to talk about collaboration, and everybody thinks they're doing it. But in many cases, it's like, yeah, we know what it means. We'd love to do it, but we're not sharing our information with anybody else. So now for us to catch up with these disruptors, because the disruptors have had a heyday now during pandemic, as you just mentioned. So, you know, some of the names that people aren't even familiar with, now all of a sudden there's aircraft all over the place. So this is here to stay. Now, if you look at one other area that we were talking about, you know, about the way things have been affected and what's happened to our particular, what we would consider traditional business, that's all changed as well now. So from an air freight learning perspective, you know, the new customer vertical and how shippers and importers will direct their business going forward has changed radically. So what do you think we have to learn from that? So Stan, let me pitch that one to you, if I may.
Well, there's one thing we haven't mentioned, and that's the elephant in the room, and that's safety and security. First of all, you realize
we're coming to that, Stan. I love that. I love that one, my friend.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. Because so many shippers, it's just the control of that is thing. Now, the way forward for the smaller and medium-sized exporter importer is clear. They're going to want to have direct access. One of the things with Alibaba and also with Amazon, remember something, when you give your business to them, you also give them your data.
Yep, cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, it's more than cybersecurity, it's commercial security. One of the reasons large companies like Nike or Apple or whatever will never have their goods sold first line. I mean, maybe a second line person would sell a product from them, but a first line, a large company will not want to deal with these companies like Amazon and JD and the rest of them, or Alibaba, is because they have to turn over their commercial data or they don't get on the platform. And don't forget something else, why there are so many of these exporters. Alibaba and Amazon take a huge chunk of that retail that you buy for them to get on their platform. So that's something that you have to realize of why there will always be a large amount of exporters or importers who want to deal directly with somebody like an airline, for example. Why can't an airline give them that service they want? That's number one. Number two, when you see these large retailers like Amazon and Alibaba, they have tremendous amount of volume, for sure. And then, of course, they have to drive costs out of the equation. Where can they go to get that? And the people that are watching this show right now better realize that the first place they're going to go is obviously the most expensive component in that supply chain for them, which is the air freight. So they're going to be wanting to get the lowest prices possible, which is a conundrum, because if they're going to ask for that, then how does Olivier with his handling company or Swissport or Donat or anyone else invest in the machinery and the equipment to meet that time frame of anything anywhere in 72 hours? It's a vicious circle, and we've got to understand that there has to be a solution. And it's like dealing with a mega forwarder or an SME forwarder. The SME forwarder won't make the same demands on you on pulling cost out of your system if you give them a product they can actually sell. Whereas a large forwarder who has a large amount of cargo, or an Alibaba or SF Express, will say, we don't want you to do anything. We just want you to carry it like before with a freight forwarder consolidation and stay out of my business. Now, the last thing, and the most important thing, we have to provide some alternative for all these people. And we have to, as an industry, realize that if we don't, then we're just going to become a bulk carrier. Unfortunately, that's not the way we should go. And carriers are reacting. There's some very good examples out there.
If I may, on what Stan just said, and talking about the people like Apple and the people that will never work with the platforms such as Amazon or Alibaba, which is understandable because Stan's very right. It's a question of commercial data, which they don't want to share. Yeah. Now, what we need to understand is that the people that will be in position to do that, means not working with these e-commerce boys, are the companies that are moving very large amount of goods. The small guys will never be in position to do that. They will need, and that's why, when you see what Amazon's doing with small businesses, and now they say everywhere that they have given the opportunity to thousands and thousands of small businesses to suddenly be in business, be able to deal. And Alibaba is no different. You know, they are putting tons of Chinese small business together where the people will have access to the market because of these platforms. So again, on one side, you get the big companies that will be able not to work with these guys, but I would say the trend will be that most of the small and maybe even medium will have to deal sometimes with the big guy, the big e-platform. So again, I think that's both sides is in a position to carry massive amount of cargo and charter flights. Now, the small and medium guys will be a bit of a different, ball game for them. So I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to say that the guy who can have the luxury not to deal with the big e-retailer are the people who can move a lot of goods.
Yeah.
One thing, Chris, I just want to interject something here because we have a good dialogue going here. This is also driving the consolidation of the large freight forwarders and buying out the smaller ones. And quite simply because of it's not just the pandemic. The 4 years ago or so, when I was doing some research for one of the major airlines in the world, they said it themselves. We cannot compete without scale. There's no way people want to deal with us if we come in and we say, okay, we can handle 1/3 of your business, because now you're selling all over the world. All of a sudden, you're not just selling to a distribution center in North America. You want us to serve Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. So don't underestimate the effect of e-commerce on how the forwarders have to position themselves to react. That's number one, which is scale and of course the economies, but also the threat that e-commerce poses for SME forwarders. It is huge.
Totally agree with what Stan said. The threat is massive.
And
people are getting different, way of, ordering things, and what you were thinking that was in the hands of a forwarder before, putting a console together, sending it to the other side of the world, and then being dispatched to the retailers. Not, some of these things disappear simply because the goods will go directly from door to door through this e-commerce platform. That's a big change.
It's huge. And sometimes, like you use the word there, threat and fear are sometimes the best motivators for the traditional business to start to adapt and change. And obviously air freight is adapting and it's addressing these needs. Now, what more needs to happen? And Salem, if you wouldn't mind, can you put that third slide up now, if you wouldn't mind? So whilst we're waiting for that, Stan, you know the slide that's coming. But as far as a model and where airlines want to go, and this virtual integrator map, why on earth, and we spoke about the word collaboration earlier, why can't now the key players in our supply chain get together and see themselves as an integral part of something bigger? And that takes it all the way through with customs, with brokerage, with first, last milers, factory to factory. Why can't they get together now and really be motivated to offer an alternative to the smaller and the medium opportunities that are out there and clearly are going to be out there for some time?
Well, Chris, keep in mind what we said with Stan. The players have changed. We're not talking about, as I said, there's people now in the business, which personally, I enter in the Liège operation right now that I've never seen before. These are big logistic Chinese company that I've never heard of, but suddenly these guys can fly full charters of cargo. And so these guys are new to the supply chain. They are not new to the supply chain in China, but they're new to the supply chain,
globally.
The air freight. So again, putting everybody together is a challenge. Additionally, I don't think everybody is looking at the situation the same way. I think some are staying with the whole picture, and some are being a bit more, dynamic on trying to change the thing. So all of this, may not put everybody, on the same page. The second thing is we have just seen a very strong stretch in terms of space on aircraft because of the pandemic. You know, the most of the wide body capacity disappeared from one day to another, which drove the whole world to try to get, you know, to try to get the freighters. I mean, everybody getting freighters or freighters, you know, capacity, even using, you know, passenger aircraft to load to put loads and loads of cargo to be able to move it because there was such a stretch. The effect is such and so big that it has put, you know, a quite a large amount, and I've seen this, you know, on the trade. Interestingly, from China, there's, as you say, 14 different lines from China with trains going over to Europe in about, say, 14 days. These suddenly were absolutely full, and so full that the cargo that couldn't go on the train anymore because of the air freight moving there is going onto the ships.
Yeah.
And now the ships, the price on the ships has almost tripled or quadrupled in a short period of time. So I think we have seen this happen. Now, what's going to happen now when the capacity on the wide body passenger will come back to a certain extent? Whether it's going to be as good as before in terms of volumes, I don't know, because nobody knows exactly how big will be the business class business going forward because of all the change. Now, what I want to say about this is maybe what we're going to see is a change on the way, you know, things are moving. One side, you're going to get the big freighters we're full of e-commerce or completely, chartered by either big Chinese logistic, either by big freight forwarder who have enough volumes to do that. And maybe the use of the wide body capacity will be for general cargo.
Yeah.
More than anything, because again, you know, when you put on a flight on a freighter, which you offload and then you move to the shed, and maybe you even move the BUP, I mean the built-up pallets, to the second line, it's quite easy to do. When you come on a passenger aircraft, sorry, you get, you know, a completely different scenario. It has to go. It takes a lot more time. It's mixed with general cargo, maybe not everything on the same pallet. So the complexity is more when you get what you call by. So that's maybe one of the things we will see, is to see general cargo more directed to wide body capacity and e-commerce to freighters. Now, that's my view. I think there's something behind this now. So to talk about all the people getting together, that's why it creates complexity, Chris.
It does. And one thing that we're good at as an industry is creating complexity, which is also something that we've got to start doing now, because we've got to make things simpler, you know, to address all the cost issues and also the skills issues. So it's another challenge that we've got to do. Now, something that's been created in most companies, and some of the companies I've been talking about now, they're far more aware now of risk and continuity. And I know Stan's even been saying, you know, even some governments who've seen that there's a freighter shortage within their national options, they're even securing their own freighter services to make sure that there's some contingency and mitigation there. So the whole world now is looking at this. Has been a big lesson, a huge lesson, and it's not one that's going to finish here. This is going to be a course over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whether it becomes a pandemic like we've just had, or we spoke briefly about cybersecurity and all the threats that are coming there. Industry is going to have to be a lot more resilient and a lot less complex. Now, with that in mind, and obviously where you're known for now, Olivier, you know, being in Liège there as well, airports that take a very cargo-centric approach and really look at not just the carriage of the cargo, but everything that goes around that ecosystem and how they manage that ecosystem, they're going to have a very good positive opportunity now to influence what happens afterwards. And or I think there'll be some more lessons learned now from the legacy airports with the legacy carriers, because things are going to shift and change so much. So with your experience, Olivier, I mean, you've seen huge growth and huge opportunities there at Liège, and it's being mirrored around the world now.
Well, I think that we have to go back a little bit to pre-pandemic time to see what was really happening in terms of airports' attitude towards cargo. I think it was quite clear that most of the big airport in Europe, and Paris is for a long time already, London, of course, Heathrow, Frankfurt, of course, to a lesser extent, but even Amsterdam, who was known as a cargo airport for many, many years, the trend was, hey, I want some slot back for my passenger services, and therefore, freighters need to move somewhere else. So that helped also, Liège, beside the story of the e-commerce, that Liège became the place for that stuff. Beside the e-commerce story, it also helped Liège, to see all these airports kind of pushing out the freighters. And they're trying to get back some slots because of the growth in the passenger, which, I have no judgment on this. I'm not saying this is right, this is wrong. I'm just saying this was happening. Pandemic comes in. And of course, Liège get massive attention because it's a massive place and grow from, say, 400,000 tons to 1.2 million in a few years. The thing is, suddenly, everybody else realized that cargo is a good product, and people that has never paid attention for years or were on the verge of pushing a big cargo out because of their needs suddenly realize that, hey, I would like these freighter back, I would like these either back, either I would like this freighter to come to my place, although there's never been there. And all airports were reacting like this. I can tell you Paris, Heathrow has opened the doors to freighters, which has not been the case for so many years ever, and suddenly, hey, the freighters are welcomes and so forth. I think this is, first of all, this is a quick turnaround from airport, to suddenly be attentive to cargo. I don't know whether it will stay when all the stuff, the wide body comes back and whether they're going to be still. But again, I think that what this all things has done, it has given smaller airport directed to cargo, such as Liège, which is a pure cargo airport, to get a lot of attention and to get a lot of credit and then to get a lot of flex. Now, will airline change back to one of the big airports? I doubt, personally. I believe that they will continue to consider a place like Liège as a better place. Why? Because the road access is good. Maastricht has grown as well, and some airport like this has grown, keeping in mind the problems of the curfews or this kind of stuff. Liège is very fortunate because they don't have any restriction. So I think that the trend will continue this way. Will people go back? Additionally, in general, when airports are at full speed on the passenger side, what you see is that there's a very hard, a very big problem in terms of airport access, road access. I mean, I don't need to tell you about Shoreham Road in Heathrow and how complicated it is for sometimes for the trucks to go there. So I think the trend is there, and these airports who became real cargo airport will continue to lead the way. It's my personal opinion.
Yep. And it's amazing even to hear that some smaller, more cargo focused airports are even thinking of converting what they had as a passenger terminal now into cargo facilities. So that's one I never thought I'd have heard of before. Now, Stan, coming back to yourself, sir, right? So obviously, and you're involved in so many airports, and it's a much better opportunity now for airports to start to direct and dictate their own ecosystem and also contribute to the good of the industry. Because if they start now to look at future-proofing their new facilities and make sure that anybody who's building a facility does so with certain things in mind, which are all the green elements as well as the more efficient ones. And also we've been speaking to some of the airports now that are successfully operating pooling of equipment. And in my personal opinion, I think there'll be an airport that will be creative enough to offer a super handler as far as employees are concerned, whereby they've got multitask capability, and you'll be able to use the resource from a pooling of expertise. But those people would be paid more money, which is what will keep people in our industry. So with all of that in mind, and also what some of the airlines have done with their own e-com products, like I know you mentioned Emirates Delivers and Lufthansa's Hayworld. Do you want to just give a little bit of an overview on those for us?
Well, First of all, I want to challenge a few of the statements for the last 15 minutes. I've been sitting here getting itchy in my chair. Okay, number one, passenger airplanes. You tell me what freighter is faster between Hong Kong and Chicago, or Hong Kong and London Heathrow or Amsterdam, than a passenger flight direct. It doesn't exist.
It's not what I said. It's not what I said.
I know. Let me finish. I'm not challenging.
When Stan gets itchy, Olivier,
Yeah.
it just depends where he wants to scratch.
No. Just think about this for a moment. If you want to compete against Amazon or you want to compete against Alibaba, what better way to do it than use an airplane that's leaving and arriving somewhere in, let's say, 14 hours nonstop? It's faster than Amazon, it's faster than Alibaba, it's faster than FedEx, and it's faster than UPS going through a hub. I think we have to concede that. So what this slide shows is the possibility to organize a virtual solution, all right? So I think the passenger wide bodies, if you want them back in the air, Mr. American Airlines, United Airlines, KLM, then what you should be doing is looking at cargo as a core business, and e-commerce is a great way to do that and leverage the speed of those wide body airplanes in the belly, because you can load a tremendous amount of cargo in the lower deck of any of the modern wide bodies. And the money is there if you follow this chart to a virtual integration, that you can leverage that speed. So I think passenger wide bodies can come back. I think that the CEOs and the CFOs of the airlines better start looking at the opportunity that sits below those seats, which are going to go back to being cheap as hell in the lower deck if they embark on e-commerce related virtual solutions. That's number one. So freighters, yes, I totally agree with you. Nobody's going to move from a freighter-friendly airport to an airport that all of a sudden saw the light and decided they want freighters back. I wouldn't do it, and I've run a few airlines, as you know. So I think airlines will be looking for 24/7 as well, because they can't afford to sit. Yeah. They can't afford to sit on the ground because of a curfew. So anybody who's 24/7 in Europe or in the USA or Middle East or Asia is a home run for e-commerce companies, just because of the plain security of what it is. So that's the second thing. The third thing is you mentioned traffic imbalances. I think I was astounded a while ago because, I having a little bit of knowledge of the Russian marketplace, and the biggest actual e-commerce company in the United States is the United States Post Office. And the biggest e-commerce company in Russia is the Russian Post. Yeah. And the Russian Post, when I was talking to them, because a lot of the Airbridge people are working there now, and their former deputy CEO was Dennis Ilian, who we all know. For example, one quote unquote small e-commerce company that they were dealing with in Chicago was sending out 5 pallets a day over to Germany to be trucked into Russia. So there is an imbalance, but maybe people don't even realize they're carrying freight that is e-commerce because it's delivered to them by a freight forwarder as common carriage. That's another thing. The largest markets in the world are all why? Why do you think Brazil and Russia are large markets? It's because of, and that's the most important thing on this slide that's on the screen right now. People in the airline industry don't understand, and same with the airports and the ground handling companies. The most important thing in the equation for an e-retailer is the consignee, not the export. That's him, not his exporter, the person who's a mom and pop shop giving the e-retailer the business. It's the consignee and the consignee satisfaction. And that's why, because of what I said before about it being 4 times more expensive than selling over the counter for a large retail company, that sale, once that consignee has gone on your platform, and if he's satisfied, he'll keep coming back. And if he keeps coming back, slowly that 4 times gets lowered. So airports, GHAs, start remembering that. The importer of record, which is on this list here, The importer is the most important person to keep the airline customer that you have on your using your services, because you are his calling card to the consignee. If you don't react to a last mile, if you don't organize it for him, customs clearance, if you don't organize it for him, and digitize throughout, because Canada Post told me when we did a seminar at Vancouver Airport many years ago, I was shocked. They said the average person checks on their phone 21 times where their shipment is. That's amazing when you think about it. So they want to know where their shipment is. They're going on their phone even when they're eating dinner to see where their shipment is. So consignee satisfaction is another thing. Now, going back to what you said, Chris, facility, airports, again, for freighters, 24/7, absolute mandate. Coming back to your bit about costs, to handle e-commerce, which is small packages, back-to-back going to individuals, each one of the packages has to be less than 30 kilos because usually last mile couriers require a maximum of 30 kilos because they're not delivering to your house with a forklift, they're delivering it by hand. So there's size restriction and weight restrictions to take into account. It means more shipments one-to-one. Even you see it if you go on the high streets. You go to Selfridges, you can buy a pair of jeans that are laser cut for you, and you'll have it in 3 days at your house because it's custom made. Well, that's going to come as a pair of jeans, not a pallet of thousands of pairs of jeans to your house. Now, that being said, the cost of handling small packages in a large warehouse is the ASRS, we call it, the automatic sort and retrieval systems. Yep. So I like your idea that you mentioned before about collaboration for higher paid staff and whatever. But this machinery is very expensive. And one of the things we promote in all the airports we work with is what we call a machine cargo interface, to try to have that neutral, but have the GHA being able to offer his value added services by after calling up, shall we say, calling it up the cargo from the material handling systems, the MHS, and then the sortation from the ASRS. So there's various ways of doing it, but we have to drive cost out of it, and mechanization is the only way we're going to do that. But this is not going to happen in 15 GHAs on one airport. So I subscribe to what you mentioned before, which is sort of a super cargo building where individual airlines and or GHAs can add the value that they want to get the business. The last thing is you mentioned about the airlines. Two business cases, which I really love. First one I'll talk about is Emirates Delivers. Emirates Delivers is not called Emirates Ships. It's called Emirates Delivers. It's sold to importers. And they've recognized what I said before, that the consignee is the most important element of this equation. And that's what they do. And they've made a great success of it. And I applaud what they've done. Another one, which was just in the press in the last 24 hours.
And sorry, Stan, to interrupt you there. One of the things there with the Emirates Delivers is that they can store orders free of charge for up to 30 days.
Absolutely. That's a fulfillment center activity. Fulfillment is different than facilitation on an airport. They've made arrangements for a person, let's say if they're shipping small goods. Let's talk about iPhone covers. I mean, you don't want to send individual boxes of iPhone covers if Emirates Delivers offers to store, let's say, 100 iPhone covers and deliver it one-on-one for you. They're providing a solution for those people who don't want to use the mega forwarders and don't want to use the mega which is fantastic. I think it's so important that we do that as airlines. Create a virtual integrator solution. That's what this chart's all about. Know the customer, know who the customer considers the most important. In this case, it's the importer. But the most important one, the most eye-opening one, I applaud it so much, is what Lufthansa has done with Hayworld. And yesterday in the press, in Cargo Forwarder from Germany, they had a whole article about Hayworld. It's only the beginning. They've made massive investments, and I've been tracking them for the last 3-4 years of the companies they bought into, where they put their money, and you could see what's coming. And
Yeah.
Hayworld is what's coming. And Hayworld, I think people such as the competitors, the major competitors of the Lufthansa group, which could be the IAG group, or it could be KLM Air France group, or whatever. They better take note of this, because it's not necessarily so much the investments. They've decided to do it in an integrated way. But what this chart shows, if you work as partners with the ground handling companies, if the ground handling companies and the airlines talk to the airports, and that's where the integration has to happen. Now, the common thread through all this, and we heard it from Courtney from ICAO, right, is data, digitization.
Yep.
They're doing their bit. The UN and ICAO is doing their bit now, and we heard that. They are taking an active role in getting the states to take air logistics seriously for two reasons. One, obviously, trade facilitation is something the UN is very much interested in. But in the case of ICAO, it's safety and security. And a huge risk is e-commerce. Now, drove last year during the pandemic, two things came top of mind to ICAO. One was, how do we move these vaccines, which is obvious. But the second thing was, how do we cope without this huge, all of a sudden, upsurge in e-commerce and these people who are shipping by air because they have to be competitive in the retail front? How do we control the safety and security, not only just for the airline? We want to remove threats. The obvious thing is bombs, but we're not always interested in bombs. It can be alcohol wipes, which are suspected of being
for the phones.
It can be lithium batteries, which, unknown to people like your daughter or the millions of companies like her, they may slip something in there which they don't even realize is dangerous. So that's one thing. Digitization is the key to this chart on the screen now. That's number one. Safety and security is number two. But also, you have to look at things from a different viewpoint. And if you want collaboration that's going to work, and I think it's the airline, the GHA, and the facility developer and the facility operator, and the GHA. That's where the collaboration has to start to make this work. And the only way to tie all this together through digitization, so that virtual solutions can be found, is not an airline solution towards it. It's not an e-commerce company. So it's an airport cargo community system where everyone can share data in a proprietary and safe and secure way. If the airports don't embark on this, and if the GHAs and forwarders don't support it, we'll never get to where this chart wants us to be.
Yeah, and coming back to what Olivier said earlier about, things being complex. Even if this is to work, and it needs to work, one of the things that also needs to be there is very, very specific, almost code of practice as to what each party has to subscribe to and has to deliver for the value baton to be passed from one to the other. So that's something that could be done relatively easy, and then it's transparent to everybody. So like you said, with the 21 times checking as to where something is, they know the process that it's going to, and they can check where the effectiveness is. Salem, can you do me a favor? Can you take that slide off now, please? Thank you. Right, back to the full face there. Olivier, just before you jump in there. Now, one of the things that's that's a big risk, we spoke about risk earlier, is about the challenges now with e-commerce and the prevention issues. So, when you look at some of the things that are happening, so you've got certain items that are restricted. For every good person, there's a bad person. So they say. So that means that counterfeit is a huge, big challenge. You've also got under declaration, and you've got some customs authorities who go for speed of clearance. So they've got differentials in declared values, and then you've got people manipulating that to get a faster process for the last milers. You've got tax evasion. You've got known rogue sellers and buyers. You've got all these things that people or Joe or Jane public don't actually appreciate at the moment. So one of the things that's got to come from all of the authorities is a greater degree of education and awareness. And it's almost like, if I was able to take it to its lowest, I'd even probably start a little e-commerce series of lessons when people are at school, so that they start to appreciate what it all means before they actually get out into the world and start giving headaches to their parents or their partners because of the amount of e-commerce that's turning up. I think I'm on first name terms with some of the delivery drivers here because of my my wife and my daughter. But those challenges are so important. And, you know, to be able to then liaise with some of the authorities and stakeholders, you know, makes the whole task seem that little bit more daunting.
Well, first, I'd just like to get back a little bit to the e-com, because what Stan says about, you know, e-com wide bodies. What you just said is an excellent reason for e-commerce to be a problem to wide body passenger aircraft, simply because of the complexity about security, what's inside, absence of control. The custom side is very true. What you mentioned about tax evasion under declaration, which I'm sure you know that the whole rules in Europe were settled from July 1st by customs, you know, imposing on an EEC basis a €0 start of charging, you know, rights and duties. And the reason was that before that it was €20. Interestingly, everything was under €20. Whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a challenge. I can tell you that customers also take, you know, in many countries in Europe now, they understand the challenge of the commercial aspect of it and the upside for a country, because obviously, you know, more declaration they have, more goods there is, more value there is, more money, you know, the country is going to get. Now, at the same time, they have to deal with, you're right, under declarations, which is not that always easy to things, and they for that need evidently some data about, something go wrong there. They need evidently some data about the nature of goods, but it's quite true also for general cargo. You know, people can lie about the nature of goods, especially
Indeed, yeah.
small shipments. So I think the customers, as the difference will be the number of shipment that will be super massive and create suddenly some bottleneck over there. The other thing is obviously also people selling the wrong things. I mean, we all know that. And as just like in general cargo, you can find, you know, shipment of drugs that happened and the customs is there, you know, to check on this. That will make it a bit more difficult because there will be so many shipments, and you can be sure that you mentioned about the bad people. The bad people knows exactly probably what is the upside of the e-commerce for them.
Exactly.
That is very true. So again, it's going to be a challenge. I agree, and the fact that people communicate certainly helps. Now the reality is that the guy who sent the shipment, if he lies, how many options do you have to find that out?
Yep.
At departure level, if he lies, very complicated. Export declaration usually it's not where the custom, you know, jump on. Get on the aircraft and it's a good that is not authorized, say on the passenger flight, for example.
Yep.
Kind of batteries of lithium batteries, stuff like this. If the guy don't declare anything, out to find out. You know, it's very easy to find you know, when the dangerous good is wrong to get on an aircraft. If you get the declaration, and if the declaration is wrong, you find out and you change it. Usually, it's the GHA that does that. Now, if the guy don't declare anything, what do you do? In a box which is just a neutral box with nothing on it. And interestingly, you probably receive a lot of things, as you say, as an individual for your family, Chris. So do I. A lot with my little boy of 12 years old, who is an absolute frantic of e-commerce. And I've noticed on the Amazon ship, the boxes, when it's restricted articles, you know, it's on it, and that also kind of give an indication on how the things could be done. And I think the Amazon model is an interesting model because they have, you know, kind of probably got over most of the hurdles and in different stuff, but for different aspect of it. But they probably went over all the hurdles. Now, a lot of e-retailers now, thousands of them, is going to be shipping. Will they be, doing like Amazon, making sure that the shipment is proper and everything? That is another question. I agree that the security of the aircraft, the traffic of any kind, the people trafficking on tons of that will be a real challenge, and it has to imply, yes, the airline, the GHA, the customs, and everything. But still, it might prove complicated sometimes to be able to control this. It's that is certainly the biggest challenge. I just want to come back 2 minutes on what Stan says about a world and the interesting aspect of these new company with Lufthansa. I just have a remark about the fact that Air World is linked with Deutsche Post, and that helps a lot in terms of being on the market. I think that every airlines, and Lufthansa is one of them, every airline that will have very strong and privileged link with post office of their own country will be having a good time. Because this is essential. If you really look around the e-commerce, what you find out is that there's a few components that always has to be there. A custom in each country which understand the balance between businesses and bringing business and wealth to the country, and back and forth, export and import. Airports, which is easy access airport because of distribution and the need to distribute at a speed, likewise Liège. Then you have the link with the post office, which is super essential to my opinion. And Stan made it clear about Russia and Brazil and all this, and then he tried to mention about Dennis was the head of Russian Post. In reality, the first place where the guy who's selling a good to another guy is going is the post office and give it. And then this goes in the bags. The biggest exporter exporter, put it this way, from China, or the more, the people who have the most volume is China Post. There's no surprise there, it goes into the bags and then it goes into this and so forth. So again, this third link is absolutely essential. Access of the airport, post office, custom, I would call it customs, awareness of control, but also favoring business at the same time. These are three super important elements. The last thing is, of course, being the quality of the dispatch of the cargo that arrive on the flights, and which speed. Usually a lot of this, by the way, in Liège, if you look at it, is going as BUP through the first line warehouse, go to the second line, being broke down, and then you get the guys who are doing the last mile coming and picking up, or sometimes some re-forwarding to other stations in Europe, and then the last mile will happen. Of course, because 98% of the goods that comes into Liège are not for Belgium, obviously, they're for the rest of Europe. So with these 4 or 5 elements, you have the key to e-commerce. I agree with you.
Olivier, could I just interject one thing? B2C, offices are it. I mean, you're moving an iPhone cover from China to my door. You're not going to give it to FedEx, UPS, Amazon, or right? I totally agree with you. The evolution is in B2B, and that's where the airlines can play a part, and the forwarder as well, if he wants to, but only if he has scale, right? So I think that the post offices are critical. There's one interesting anecdote I'd like to add to your statement. We had a meeting, I won't tell you in which country because I don't want to get in trouble with that local government, but we had a meeting with an airport where we were sitting there, and one of the major GHA said, Stan, you know who the largest drug dealer is in this country? And I said, no, I don't really want to know. He says, it's the post office. And I looked at him and I sort of smiled, and then the light came on, because if you watch TV, I don't know if you have it over there in Europe, but they have all these airport customs checks and everything else. And you see the stuff that goes through. It's just unbelievable that they catch. But when you say that, you realize you have to automate everything like Chris talked about, the post office. Customs and Border Protection have to be involved with the airports in checking this B2C post office business as it comes in, not as it goes out, but as it comes in.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last thing is the freight forwarders. There was an excellent webinar once where the gentleman from used to be with Panalpina, he's now with DSV, I think. He explained the complexities for a forwarder in handling the security aspect. And in your answer about security with these 100,000 new customers potential, this is an opportunity for the GHAs, I think, because if you can cut out a delay in the secure handling, it could be that second line who's handling the import when they're not busy could handle the export. This is an opportunity for the GHA to take some time out of the chain and offer efficiencies to these companies, because Lufthansa may have the post office in Germany, but it doesn't have a post office in Brazil. So there's a lot of opportunity here for the people that are our audience today, I believe.
Yeah, you mentioned, Stan, about B2B. I got your point about B2B, which it's a different scenario as B2C. But B2B has to be understood in two ways. There's a B2B large company to another large company. But there's also the B2B big company, or like a guy who produce stuff for the automotive, to a small garage, as you mentioned. It's a B2B business, if I'm not mistaken. If we take literally the point, it's a B2B business.
Yes.
But it's different. Moving the goods from a big B to a small b is different than moving from a big B to a big B, if I may. It's a different scenario. That's why I think we should make the point about the fact that a B could be a small guy. It's not always a big guy. Now, you're right. The post office is people send any kind of things, and I agree. Now, I think as far as kind of checking on for example, the drugs or being receiving the wrong things from different places, I think that it probably takes somewhat a way of centralizing the goods in one place and organizing with the dogs and the things. I agree with automation, but automation is fine when you want, depends on what you want to detect, to be honest. I mean, automation on X-ray stuff like this and an automated system where you pass through different level of security could be good, but it's not always the ultimate thing. I have to say that, the dogs are a pretty decent tool when it comes to drugs, and I think that's one of the most efficient. Now, what it takes is, and I can assure you, talking with various customs that people I know for years, they are scratching their head and looking at situation, how to handle all of this, and to be sure they can catch the maximum things. And I think there's a few ideas there. There's a few, most of these customs are very smart. They're very efficient. At the same time, they realize that, there's a 90%, 98% of the business is not wrong things. It's good things where they're going to get money for their stuff. So I'm actually talking with some of them, with some of them about, these things. And I think that's, custom has a big piece of the answer in terms of how do they want to deal with this.
Also,
I think,
Sorry, Olivier. Also, I mean, states and governments and deterrence, the repercussions when people knowingly abuse or bypass the systems, that has to be a lot stronger to help the business.
For sure. But again, I think the first point, as far as cargo, when it comes to whether it's e-commerce or this is where it's being checked the first, where you really can put a strong security position. I mean, when the goods have been custom cleared with a false declaration, it's too late.
Yeah.
The key is when the flight arrives and the cargo is off. This is when, things, where does the cargo goes? How do you check it? How do you verify that there's no drugs, there's no stuff? with different means. Again, you know, it could be a sorting system with different level of security. It could be dogs, could be whatever. This is where it has to happen, because after that it's gone. And stand with the point of the second line. I think that yes, second line could be an answer, because the first line is usually seeing the pallets going through, mostly as BUP before being breakdown on the second line. So second line is where you really dispatch the stuff, put the stuff, you know, and that's probably where. And keep in mind that these second lines are bonded warehouse. They're not free zone, and you know they're bonded warehouse, and therefore they're under custom bond and under customs. How do you say in English? Custom control.
Yeah, oversight. Yeah.
But gentlemen,
so it's probably where the thing is.
Sorry, Olivier. Gentlemen, if we want to be serious about knocking as much as time out of the supply chain as we can as an industry, meaning GHAs, airports, and for customers, it could be a forwarder, it could be any retailer. We have to take this into account. We have to look at the supply chain, provide it in a virtual way so that people can use us instead of having to go and give away their business to a large integrator. We have to give them a solution. And the only way that can happen is on the ground. I mean, a 777 is a 777, be it Cathay Pacific or British Airways. It's the same stupid piece of aluminum. There's no difference. And the only differentiator is on the ground. And I think the GHAs would be really doing the industry a favor by getting involved in the value chain that's needed to create that virtual situation we had on the slide before. That's number one. Number two, digitization throughout. And if we don't listen to ICAO and the UN, if we don't listen to what's just common sense, that we have to go to a cargo community system, because if an exporter in China or in Brazil or in Russia wants to use a local customs broker with a small trucking company, his exporter in Brazil wants to be able to go on his phone and see whether it's delivered, yes or no. That's the customer satisfaction he has to deliver. The only way we can do that is if we collaborate, and the only way to do that is digitization and common solutions that are not the proprietary. They're not a unique selling point for an individual GHA. There is some component in all this where the GHA has to take a stand that part of his accountability on an airport is to provide a community system. And I'm telling you right now, because I'm heavily involved with airports, as you probably know, we have succeeded, and we are at the point now where airports are going to produce RFPs for developers and also RFPs for when they're dealing directly with a GHA, that service standards have to be met. And cybersecurity is going to be in there from now on. Safety and security is going to be in there from now on, but also your participation in a cargo community system so that the community can thrive, not just your business case in fighting against the GHA that happens to be beside you. So get ready, gentlemen. It's coming. And I can guarantee you it's coming soon.
Very good. Now, gents, we're coming near to the end of the time. I just want to throw one thing at you, and both of you, I'm sure, will be able to give an answer on it. When you look at the reverse logistics and the impact of e-commerce now with the returns, and I was joking with my daughter saying, very soon they're going to know your shopping habits, and if you keep ordering so many choices and sending them back, they're going to block you. They're not going to send anything to this address. And she thought I was joking. I don't think I'm joking. I think those sort of trends are coming. But the reverse logistics is also a big challenge now as well, moving forward.
Hey, it's more lucrative than shipping e-commerce. There are companies that just handle reverse logistics. There are last mile delivery companies that will stand at your door and wait for you to try on the garment and give it back to them. Okay, so it is a huge problem for e-commerce companies. Remember my 4 times?
Yep.
Pardon?
Yeah, and one of the, like, having lived in Saudi and also doing some work with Nakel, they had one of the lowest return rates because in Saudi most of the e-commerce is cash on delivery.
India as well.
Yeah, and that's a model that that seems to work quite well. it's definitely one that I think would be a deterrent for some of the people I know when they're making a booking.
Chris, for the last mile, the delivery to handle cash, because
Yeah, no, clear, and it comes then into the other realms of then security and opportunities for other people to do. Right, gents.
Chris, about this reverse logistics story. So you mean probably the goods that has to go back to?
Yes.
Okay. I guess for the sake of making it easy for a simple mind like me, I can tell you we already handle this in Liège. We already do this on behalf of some of our customers.
Yeah,
quite interesting thing. That's right. It had to the price. Now, I tend to think, whether it's B2B or B2C, I tend to think that, first of all, if you go to a shop, I guess the price of the logistic is included in the price of whatever you buy. Okay. When you ship it from somewhere and it's not been transported yet, it's not inside. So I would say normally the good should be cheaper than the one you find in the shop. So therefore, does it take care of the cost or the fact that the cost would be higher? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, Stan said it's 4 times more expensive. It's a bit a quiz for me to see that, but why not? What I'm saying is, yes, the reverse logistic has a cost. Now, reality is it's a question of volumes. You know, I see how much we sending back. I can't say the name of the customers, but it's a huge company, and I can tell you that it's fairly massive.
Yep.
So I would say for a handling company, it's a pretty good deal. You know, you get it in and you get it back. So you take the price twice and you're a happy man. Although the stuff you have to do to get this done, I mean, the reverse logistic has to go with a much more detailed stuff. You have to open the boxes and scan and do a number of things, then put it back into big crates and then send it back. So it had to the cost, but I think honestly, it's part of the cost for these big companies. It's just.
But also, it's an opportunity for the GHAs, because in some of the shipments that we've run the trials over the past few years with a buddy of mine in Heathrow, they go back to the exporter, and you have 3 choices. You can store it because it's cleared already, and they can then, instead of sending you a new red sweater, they can say, send that red sweater to so-and-so, and you can package it, label it, and make money on that as a GHA.
Absolutely.
And then there's the destroy, because it's not customs cleared or whatever, and it's not worth sending back because it's too expensive, just destroy it. And then normally what they do is give it away to a charity or something. Sure. And then there's the returning back to the shipper, which is, there's 3 elements to this. Again, for a GHA, because we want to cut out complexity and we want to cut out time, I think it's an opportunity for second line activity.
Yeah, you're right, Stan, and I think that's why when you look at this business, and that's what I've done the last 2 years, you have to have open eyes, without any kind of things, fogging your mind about it. It's a simple business. I mean, handling is a simple business. I spent 40 years of my life into the handling. It's a very simple business. You don't have, and Chris was right. Why make it complex when you can make it simple? Or it's exactly the way, around what we usually say, which is why make it simple when you can make it complex. And I think that's what we've been doing for so long. If you look at Cargo 2000, that was supposed to be a revolution, and we are 2021. There's no revolution 21 years after.
We're still talking about e-airway bills and digitization.
And so I think that the way to look at this business now, just to have an open mind and clear mind, and just look at what's new to us, what is in the pot in addition to what we currently do. Just say, move the goods. There's a lot more to it. And I'm not talking about last mile, but the return logistic is important, and we are at the cross of everything when we receive the goods, of course. So I think that it's quite easy to have a clear mind about it. Just look at what's on top of what you usually do, and you're gonna get a lot more. You're gonna get a lot more, and you have to talk
to our GHA listeners. Where's the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, no, they're out there. But it's ironic, isn't it? You go years back and people say, what's the difference between passenger and cargo? And they say, well, cargo only goes one way. Well, now it's starting to return as well. So it's a big difference. Now, gents, we've come to the end. Now, Stan, you're familiar with this. What I've been doing, Olivier, is I've been asking every guest, and Stan has as well, if you had the opportunity to introduce 3 high-impact activities or decisions or changes into the business that would make a big difference over the next 9 months, what would they be? So, Stan, I think to be fair, we'll start with you. And I've probably got.
Stan, he does this on every podcast, you know.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
We should be aware of this, you know. He's trying to get some very smart things that everybody else will benefit from. 2 old guys, you know.
Yeah, but
look, guys, there's one theme that I'm going to tell you. But this is not new for me. It didn't take this podcast to come up with. You got to digitize, guys.
Gotcha. I got that one down as number 1 for you. So
that's the only solution to all this. That's number 2. Number 1, I mean. Number 2, please realize that you as GHAs and airports especially, please realize that you have an accountability and responsibility to the total industry by creating common platforms. For it might be only 20% or 30% of what you do that you have to share data. But stop looking as a silo. Stop looking as a ground handling company, and I want to be competitive with the other guy down the street, so I'm not sharing anything. So you have to look at some common solutions on airports in order to be able to provide a virtual solution for everyone, not just the huge companies. We have to protect our SME companies. We have to protect the local economy.
Yeah,
we have to provide solutions. And the third thing and the last thing is going back to, I guess, number 1 and number 2, is that the communication and collaboration we speak about, it cannot be in Geneva or anywhere else. It has to be also on the airport. And what I mean by that is the local communities, the airports now have to take an accountability for creating local and community stakeholder involvement. Yeah. Because Houston is not Chicago, Chicago is not Amsterdam, Amsterdam is not Dubai, and Dubai is not Shanghai. Each airport has an ecosystem that has to contribute to the whole. And why I say that is simple. UN in the UK is, sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
The UN, maybe we'll send you a shipment by e-commerce of some gasoline. So, but what's
and it'll probably come undeclared.
Send him some veggies more important. You need to buy food.
Yeah. But no, what I'm trying to say is the UN and ICAO is moving to data corridors. They have an actual committee on a state level talking about data corridors. Now, what our obligation is to create also logistics corridors. Yeah. And what I mean by that is once we have it fixed locally, airports have to, for their most important trade lanes, have to start collaborating with the airports that link in the most important trade lanes. I'll give you an example with the work we did with Atlanta and Amsterdam. So airports also have to step up now and start realizing on certain trade lanes, you can have a data corridor, but you also have to have a logistics corridor. And what I mean by that is what goes in Amsterdam has to come out in New York, or what goes in Shanghai has to come out in Liège. With the efficiency, the safety, the security that we need to be competitive. Or we're as airlines and GHA is going to be not getting the investments we need to make these changes we've discussed throughout this podcast. Yeah, we need to add that value. And the only way to do that is to create data and logistics corridors and encourage your airports to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Stan. Olivier, last words with you, my friend.
All right, as far as what Stan, I certainly go with what Stan just said. I would have one element, which to me is essential because, in a way, I would say this element that has the most information as far as what the goods are, and this is custom.
Yeah.
And customs, I remember some of the conference we had before, where we had as a guest the WCS vice president or president, and I think you and I were co-chairman. I think a dialogue with the custom is super essential. Why? Because they are, by all means, the one who has a lot of data, for sure, about the goods about the value, about the and I would say, in general, customs store massive data about exchange around the world. So I think the custom is a super element, and I've noticed, I can tell you that, and I went through this several times, where the airport authority said, "Oh, I'm going to be into cargo big time, and I'm going to create a community stuff with the forwarders, with the GHA," and then forgot about custom. And then when the custom comes in and is finally invited because somebody realized that who is the boss of the air freight at the airport, that's custom.
Yeah.
It goes in, it goes out only with their agreement. Otherwise, it doesn't move.
Yeah.
So when you realize that, suddenly you say, "Hey, the boss of custom, can you please join us for being part of this community?" I can remember the reaction, the one in Paris, 25 years ago when we were looking at doing this. He looked at everybody and said, "You forgot to invite me the first time. You know what? Why don't you go to hell with your community system just because we forgot?" So custom is a super important element.
Yep. Number one.
I think it's what, one, that's one. Now, you want two more. Again, I think that for the key things is to have a clear mind, Chris, and look at this business as a simple business and look at what is the opportunity behind. So talk with our customers. And when I talk with our customers, it could be obviously the shippers, because we start to know them because of the relation that is created with these massive charters, so we're talking to big logistic company in China, we're talking to the most famous are the people like Chanel, of course, but there is many of them, which are also carrying massive amount of business. It's through that line is to kind of identify from them, and their own customers, what the needs are, what they expect from us, and how we're going to deal with it. And again, on arrival, be a bit open-minded and say, well, there's maybe something more for me into this. So I think that having this attitude, proactive attitude of talking with the shippers, big logistic company that for the first time we're seeing coming over. Same with the big forwarders. The big forwarders have the capacity to move a lot of cargo, and they can order aircraft like this by chartering some aircraft. Again, I think that the key question is sit down with them and say, hey, what's your need? What do you expect? They are now going through multiple hubs in Europe, multiple hubs in the US. Maybe bring them also some solutions. I mean, Stan rightly mentioned about talking to airport, talking to forwarders. We are also here to sit down with these guys and say, hey, you know what? Have you thought about going there rather than there? Because from an operations standpoint, it will be much faster. And the fact to promote some places that nobody would have thought about. I think it's the best example of something that great that happened about an airport which was coming out of nowhere and suddenly became one of the largest cargo airports in the world. And I think Stan's working on a few things in the US, and we talk together on a regular basis about this. That's where also part of the things should be. It takes, for people to get together and discuss, options. And options is not always the same airport. Options are different stuff.
And I think, Olivier, sorry, I think something that myself and Stan have been talking about, journalism and the press and everything. It's refreshing if people start thinking of positive outcomes and positive opportunities rather than always the barriers and the blockers. And people need to be enablers now of these opportunities moving forward. So it will be refreshing. It's also something that the next generation of cargo leaders needs to take on board. Don't get yourself weighed down with all these problems and negativity. See everything as a fresh opportunity.
Absolutely.
And that's where people will develop something that, somebody say, I thought that, but it's not about thinking it, it's about putting it into practice. So I like that one. Number two.
It's just what you said, about your family ordering, just watching the kids. What they do is giving you some answer about, how you should look at this new business. I was reading that 85% of the future type of employment are unknown in 15 years, are unknown today.
Yeah.
It tells you how much the world is changing and how open eyes you should be and look at things and have a vision. The vision is important. The vision is step back, look at things and say, hey, now I have a view about the future. I have a view of what I should do with these guys because I want to help them. I want to do business with them. I want to do a number of things. And I agree, this is a very interesting period. You know,
Olivier, do me a favor. Get the CEOs and CFOs of airlines to talk to your kids.
Well, you know, I don't know.
It might be dangerous there, Stan, because we don't want them all to get into TikTok, whether it's 1 minute or 3 minutes. So that might not be the best of suggestions.
We need that entrepreneurship because, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, when I talk to some of the major GHAs, I gotta tell you, it's disappointing because, you know, how can I afford to pay $1 to do that? Well, come on, guys.
Yeah. No, but please God, touch wood. You know, we're on the cusp of a major change, and it's being driven for the right reasons. So, if I can just put you the third one, Olivier.
Oh, you want the third one? You notice that I only said 2.
I noticed.
I close enough to say 3, but
no.
Another one is the third one is very important, to be honest, Chris. This is that for the future of your future chairmanship at the conference, please forget about the 3 things. Just say 2, and that will be my third one. Is that okay?
That would be your third. Well, sorry, my friend. No. Come on now, I've got to put you under pressure. Hat trick. What would be the third one?
What else?
Better French fries at Liège Airport cafeteria. How about that?
Well, that could be a good third one, Stan. I agree with you, but I don't know if Chris can come to Europe right now. Are the Brits authorized to come?
Yes, of course. We're welcome everywhere, as is normal. It's always good to return to different parts of the old empire.
Well, the third one is I joined Stan on one is I'd like to see the airport, you know, changing attitude.
Yeah.
Cargo, for sure. And I've seen this for too long. Spent 40 years seeing some of the airport where I was doing business, looking at cargo like the third world or whatever, you know, and something that was not interested. What the COVID brought is it shows that cargo is important. It shows that cargo is essential. It suddenly make it a hero type of thing rather than what it was considered before. I regret to see that it takes to see such a sad situation as COVID and people dying to realize that some things are very essential and very important.
Yeah.
That will be my third one. And
Okay. So
fourth one. Right?
No, that's it. Third one's good. So the ecosystem orchestra leader being the airport. And it always reminds me of an orchestra when they used to have the great big drum. And you'd think, what did this guy do in practice? When did he think in a classroom that he wanted to be on the drums? You know, and then all of a sudden you've got everything going, and then he just looks up and he goes, boom. And that's like cargo. So hopefully the boom is now loud enough to make changes moving forward.
Yeah, you know, by the way, Chris, that I play drums, huh?
I know you play an awful lot of instruments, a one-man band, and I can't wait to see you perform. Last time we spoke,
I'm happy to do the bang you just mentioned about.
Yeah. Chris, one last thing there on that point, okay? The airports have to stop looking at cargo as a real estate transaction and start realizing that the cargo facilities and the GHAs that operate in them are marketing tools for the airports, for the airlines, well, for the airports as well, but also for the airlines. They're a marketing tool. And if the airlines are now finally accepting that cargo is a core business, they may have to change a few things and on the new aspects to make sure that what the airlines need is taken into account.
Brilliant, gents, lovely. And Olivier, just on one thing, who knows, maybe I'll have a chat with Parveen. Remember we spoke about putting a little band together at the next conference and we call them Cargo Noise. So maybe we'll be able to do that at the next one.
We need to practice together a little bit. And,
in Rome, in Rome next year.
Oh God.
Cargo Noise.
Stan, it's okay. Yeah, Stan, it's okay. You can sing if you want.
Oh no. I wouldn't impose that on anyone. So
all right.
Now we'll get a little band together.
Was very nice to be with you guys.
Yeah. Take care, gents. And Salem's just going to take us off record. and then we can have a little couple of minutes chat. But thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciated, as always. Cheers.